1.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to People Add Value Experience. Today is going to be a very fun day. It's going to be a cheerful day. It is going to be an experience for everyone listening. We have on today a young lady, Rachel Bright. Hello, Rachel.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good.
We are going to be discussing her past and history, her exceptional life, the ups and downs of her life, how she's overcome odds, trials, and tribulations, and been successful in her career and has continued to climb up the ladder. And she is going to give all her tricks and trades. So please tune in and stay with us. If you can, please, depending on the medium you are listening to and consuming this or watching, please like, subscribe, follow. All right, everyone, let's go ahead and start with Rachel's background and get to know a little bit about her. Spoiler alert, she has worked in a couple of microbreweries and knows how to brew beer. So pretty bad stuff right there. I didn't do my beep button. I should have used my beep button.
Heck yeah.
But Rachel, I know everyone's going to really want to learn about you. So I'm going to let you take over. Just talk a little bit about your history.
Okay. Yeah. So as Brian said, my name is Rachel Brighty, and I am currently a brewer in the craft brewing industry. My background before I got into that as a profession was as a fisheries biologist, and I went to school for marine biology. And I grew up in the Midwest, and now I live in sunny Florida.
So what hometown did you grow up in the Midwest? What's your hometown?
My hometown is called Festus, Missouri.
Okay, not a disease. It sounds like...
No, I know. I get a lot of people tell me it sounds really gross. I get Seinfeld references like Festivus.
Yes.
The town itself is actually kind of funny, the way they got the name. Apparently back before it was named Festus, it used to be called Tanglefoot because there were so many drunks. And the town, like the mayor, decided that that's not really a great name for a town. You know, we need to clean it up a little bit. So they did what any good Midwestern town would do back in the day. And they opened a Bible and put their finger down and decided the first name they came to would be the name of their town. And by God, if they didn't come to Festus. So
wow,
there we go.
Not John, Abraham, anything.
No, although that could have been funny.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true, especially if it's John.
Yes.
Spoiler alert. Okay, so growing up in a small town, you know, one of the things that's always interesting to know is, you know, what do you remember your population when you're growing up?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was as small as some of the other surrounding towns. Like it was more populated, if you will, but the population was like probably 15,000.
Oh, okay. Okay. I mean, that's pretty substantial.
It is. Yeah. It's not super tiny. I mean, we had McDonald's and Walmart and gas stations,
yeah,
like all your typical stuff. But a lot of the homes like in the area, our county's pretty big. So you would live like on farmland and then usually drive into town to like get all those things. So even though there were a lot of people, where I actually lived was more on the outskirts of town. So like winding roads, gravel roads, dirt roads, that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty exciting to know like where you've come, like how you've gotten here now from this, right? So we're going to pull the thread and get to that because I just think it's very exciting. Because sometimes, you know, you come across people in life and they're just like, man, these are fascinating people. And it's such a great thing and opportunity to have a conversation and just get to know about people. Because I think, you know, life is too short. So sometimes you're like, let's have a conversation and get to know. And like, you know, again, some people get the value added from the experience. So, you know, you grew up in a small town. What did you guys do for fun?
Well, honestly, we spent a lot of time outside. My family actually owns a small property on the Missouri-Iowa border. That was about an hour and a half north of us. So like I spent so many weekends out there with my family and doing like four-wheeling and hunting and fishing and that type of thing. Locally in town, though, We didn't have a lot of water where I was at, other than the Mississippi, which you don't want to swim in. So we just did very basic, like middle America things where like we would bike around the neighborhood or swim in the community pool, or, you know, we always had like a local arcade or roller skating rink for those who remember those, and movie theater. So just a very generic 90s American childhood, I feel like.
So here, a big question, right? Because of where I grew up and what my parents owned growing up. Did you have a bowling center?
Oh, we did. Thank you. I totally forgot. And it was connected to one of the best local Italian restaurants. So I know. So you had this awesome like Italian restaurant, or you could go to the back side with the back entrance where like they allowed smoking, and they had the bowling alley, and they had the kitchen window out the back too, though. So you could hang out in the bowling alley and still get like this awesome Italian food. So you had kind of like two very different crowds that would visit this establishment. It was awesome.
Instead of carving up for a marathon, you're carving up to go bowling.
Heck yeah, dude.
I love that. Wow, that's really cool. So, you know, it's funny. I wanted to interject a little earlier because you said hunting, fishing, and, you know, you just have to say loving, and then you're pretty much a country song. You know, hunting, fishing, loving every day, Rachel. So, okay. So in high school, like what, did you have any sports you participated in? Any other kind of extracurricular activities, anything like that?
Yes. So in high school, I was just one of those kids who was trying to be involved in as many things as I could. I don't actually, you know what? People are going to say it's not a sport, but I'm here to tell you you're wrong. I was a cheerleader for 4 years, and we were pretty good, actually. So I went to a small private high school. I only graduated with like 69 other kids.
Wow.
Yeah. So my school was like maybe 350 people total. It was very small. But for being at a private school, I felt like our program for cheering was really good. We went to state a couple times, and I really enjoyed it. It was something I did year round for both football and basketball. I even continued to do it in college for my first year as well. And I loved it. I enjoyed it a lot. I tried track one season, which is hilarious because if you know me, like I am not a runner at all. Like I barely finish a mile in PE class when I'm being forced to do it. So the fact that I thought I was going to try out for track is mildly entertaining, but I'm glad I did it. I learned a lot. It was a fun season and I stuck it out. So other than that, I like sang in my church choir, and I did stuff with my church youth group for years, and Stuco. Like I said, I kept student council. Yeah.
All these hip words. I grew up in the 80s. That wasn't Stuco at that place.
So I just, I tried to keep very busy.
Yeah. But I guess what like inspired you to do that? Like, was that intrinsic motivation? Did you like your family sort of pushing you to do that? Like what made you go like, hey, I want to do all this stuff?
I think I get a lot of joy from being around other people. So part of it is just like the endorphins that I get from being involved in so many activities and like being around other people and doing things that I enjoy, brings like a lot of positivity to my life. And I felt like it was filling my cup. I also think that I was a little angsty as a teenager. I know a lot of people see me as this like very bubbly and outgoing person, which I try to be, but I was very angry as a teenager, kind of dealing with some emotions from my parents' divorce. They got divorced when I was only like 6 or 7 years old, and it just really impacted me later. And so if I'm being honest, I think part of the reason I took on so many activities is to get out of the house. Like, so in a way, yes, I mean, don't get me wrong. My parents were super encouraging. They were happy that I was involved in stuff. They were very supportive of me in all of my endeavors and things, and they're very proud. But I think, honestly, part of it was just me like, you know what? I need to get out and I need to do something. Yeah. Because in addition to all of that, I also work 2 jobs. So I just... I really was like, I'm going to do all the things.
Sleep in your house and that's it? I mean, that's like, were you ever, it doesn't even sound like you were home.
I really wasn't. I mean, I feel like I lived in my car a lot of the time, not actually living in my car, but as a teenager, you know, like going from one activity to the next activity, like I would change in the bathroom at work so that I could make it to practice or something, or I would, you know, get out of church and then change clothes so I could run to work or what have you. Yeah. So it just, I was on the go a lot, and I find that I still like that in my adult life. I like scheduling. I like to be busy. I've just found maybe healthier ways to go about it, you know, now.
Yeah. There's a movie, like as soon as you said angst and cheerleader, I think it's called Stick It. Have you ever seen that movie?
Yes.
Like I was totally like, come in, you're all rebel, and then you're like, oh, she's really good. And like have the eyeliner, you know, like
yeah, Stick It and Bring It On are two like core gymnastics cheerleading movies. And if you haven't seen it, stop what you're doing, go watch it, come back.
I don't know. Yeah, I've watched it probably, I don't know, I'm an adult male, but I've watched Stick It a couple of times. I like, I don't know. Random movies. Just, I'm a movie person. So just whatever's on, especially living overseas, it was like whatever came out, I just bought it and watched it or whatever.
Right.
So, you know, the irony is, you know, as I've known you and we've had conversations, we've been friends for a while now.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think you've always resonated as an introvert. So, and by definition, like how you recharge your battery, you know, being by yourself or whatever. I know you like books and stuff. We'll talk about that. But but it sounds very much like you recharge your battery being around other people in these instances.
It's interesting you bring that up, because this is something I've like really wrestled with myself, and having to learn what really fills my cup and how I benefit. I don't know if you're interested in like the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or any of that type of stuff, but I'm a huge nerd. So like, I'm really into that. You? So I'm an ENFJ, like the giver or teacher or whatever you want to say. And then the Enneagram, I'm a 2, wing 3. And apparently those tend to line up together. Like that's a pretty common pair if you take the test together. So it does say, according to ENFJ, it says that I am extroverted, but from all of the like research I've done and reading, I'm a parent, if you're gonna like classify me in these very specific types. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna put me in a box, what a lot of the like suggested research on it says is that I'm like we are the most introverted of the extroverts. So like of all the extroverted types, ENFJs need more alone time than all kinds of other extroverts. And so it's something where I feel recharged in both ways. And so what I really try and do in my own personal life is just give myself a few social days a week and really kind of plan and schedule that out, but also know when it's going to be too much and too overwhelming, because I can have a week where it's like, go, 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 go. And within a couple days, it's like, oh my God, I need everyone to just leave me alone. I want to lock myself in a room with a show or a book or a video game or something and just be by myself for a little bit, and then I'll be good.
Wow. Yeah, that's, you know, it's funny because like I'm an ENFP, but I retook it recently for whatever reason, and it was the J popped up.
Really?
So, yeah. So I don't know, but you know, I used to teach this right back in the day, like all the different, you know, what was it, like Egyptians and Romans, and there was melachonic. I can't say the word. Like, you remember the faces, like those 4 very like almost carved in plaster faces. Like,
yes.
So like all this stuff, we've always been doing this, and it's just gained, right? And now there's like 50 gajillion different things, like you said, all these emotional intelligence, all these tests you have. The interesting part is I studied Myers-Briggs. They actually limited their test subjects. Like they did not have the big variable that we would now with like certain females and certain people in jobs, which is interesting digging into that. So their control group, the demographic was actually quite limited.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I do want to say that I know like when I bring up the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs, some people are like, well, that's not science. Like and you know what? They're right. Like as a scientist, right? So my degree's in marine biology. So whenever I view papers or like I look at things, you want to look at peer-reviewed stuff. You want to look at who's actually publishing it, who's funding the project, you know. But at the end of the day, yeah, you have to look at the variables. And my point is, I'm glad you brought it up, because there were some if you want to say, scientific flaws in the way they did the experimentation. And I think it would be interesting to maybe try and redo or evaluate in the just with a larger group of people, if you will, and
I mean, I'm going to have to disagree slightly. So I think it was a science, right? Ironically, my oldest is going through the different vocabulary words, and in science, it's like, what's the definition of science and all that, right? So there is the hypothesis, and then you have variables in a controlled group. It doesn't mean they were right, but they did, document and annotate, here's our controlled group, and here's our outcome or output. I think, as we've evolved and changed, we would change those variables, but it's anything where, right, like you want it to be repeated again. So like if I took that same group of people, you want to be able to say like, here's the variables that came into play, right? Here's the process, the methodology, and then the output should be the same. So again, if you add different variables now, there's probably going to be a different output, right? If we change those variables. So I think there was some science behind it. Now, again, from our perspective, was that control group the best group? Probably, not, but.
Right. No, and I'm sorry, I'm probably misspoke what I was actually trying to say. So I agree with you. I'm saying maybe their control group should have been larger or different, but they did still follow the scientific method.
Sure.
Absolutely, they did. So in that regard, yeah, absolutely, you're right.
Yeah, when I wrote a paper for a class I took, and it was over demographic leadership, and one of the interesting parts I found was, so they had us go back, this guy, and look at the different generations and life events, significant life events like the JFK assassination, the Challenger explosion, and then technologies that came in those different, like, the silent traditional, the wars,
right.
all the 9/11, all that stuff that occurred, and that perspective and social environment and how things have changed, right? So back in the day, that control group made sense for that time and that perspective. And again, right, we've changed quite a bit since then. So it's like, it's one of those things, it's eye-opening. It's eye-opening to take all those variables into consideration. And I think one of the greatest things you said earlier was like, go back and look. So everyone always looks at the output. One of the things also that you said is go back and look who funded it. Because sometimes that may or may not curtail the outcome.
Yes. I can honestly, it's just a topic that I think everyone in the world right now needs to learn how to do their own independent research. That's something that like I'm super passionate about because false information is out. It's honestly more prevalent, I think, than the truth right now. Like I won't get too far down that rabbit hole because I'm sure we could talk for hours about that. But my point being that I just think it's really important for people to, look at an article or look at a paper. Yeah, okay, that's great. But like we were talking about, who's funding this? Like, what was the control group? What are you looking at? And I don't know, just understanding where all of those sources are coming from and then making up your own mind about that.
I know. I don't think I have it. I had these little books because I always point to, they're somewhere, but critical analysis and critical thinking. To me, I always talk about that. I think that's some of the things we're starting to lose.
Yes.
Is we're just accepting something to accept it and not doing the appropriate thinking and having that analytical side of our brain kick in.
Right.
To do that further research, right?
Right.
And so some of that is like you and I, right? We're having a conversation. You have experienced things. Like you have lived your life and experienced things. I have not. You're a great source I can go to. You're an expert in some of your fields. Like, so I can come to you, right? I can read books, but then I'm interpreting things, right? So there's different ways to absorb and different mediums to get this information from. And I think you hit it spot on. I mean, that is an extremely important for some people to do is like, hey, you got to do a little bit of your own. You got to, right? Like, and I always say that. I'll be like, hey, guess what I saw? I didn't fact check it, but.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's important too. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong about being like, oh, I read this today or I saw this today, but just being like, by the way, I'm not, I didn't fact check this or I didn't look this up or whatever. It's just good to know or to be like aware of that and self-aware of that for sure.
So how, this is crazy. So thank you, by the way. We're digging, I know, but we're coming back. So how did you, I'm just the perception. You went from being a cheerleader and sort of, a rebel with a forerunner, four-wheeling, and then you went into school into a scientific field. Mm-hmm. So, your friends, your family, perception, like how like, what was their reaction when they're like, oh, you're not doing, I don't know, literature, because I know you love literature, like, like, what is it called? Language arts. You didn't do a language arts degree. You went to the science side. So like, how did everyone go like, Rachel, are you sure you want to do that? Or
I guess it wasn't a shock for my family or anybody for me. So my dad's a doctor, and he's been a critical care and pulmonologist like my entire life. My stepmom's a nurse. My stepdad's an OBGYN, and my mom's an artist. So my point is very medical heavy field background there. Yeah. But anyway, my point is, as much as I've always liked literature and I've liked art and I like creating, because that is such a big part of who I am, I do like science. Like I like puzzles. I like problems. I like to solve things like mysteries or completing a maze or a word find, like that type of stuff, like just really fascinates me. And so I had thought about wanting to be, like all kids do, like a vet or a writer when I was young. Those were my two things, like either want to work with animals or I wanted to write books. Like that is what I wanted to do. And then that transformed into wanting to do crime scene, like science stuff. Like I thought I wanted to go for like forensic chemistry, which part of me still dreams about in like another life.
I have a person coming on.
Really?
Chrissy. Do you know Chrissy Ann?
Maybe.
She's coming back. She does the crime. Yep.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Yep.
That's really cool.
So I'll hook you guys up.
Yes, please do. That would be, I would love to nerd out and just
guess where she got her tattoos from?
Hopefully Rihanna.
That's right.
Hell yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Keep going. Okay.
No, that's perfect. Trifecta.
That's right.
Where were we?
So you said you were thinking about doing forensic.
Oh, yes. So you asked if it was surprising. Yeah. So anyway, I thought I wanted to do forensics, and then I realized I'm a giant baby and living in that world every day would be hard. And then I think, honestly, growing up in the Midwest and realizing how much I've always liked nature and animals and wanting to preserve it, and then realizing, I never really get to see the ocean. I don't really know much about it. I don't get to experience that. It just kind of like fostered this fascination for me. And when I was 15 or 16, I got my like scuba diving certification through Patty. And that kind of like was a game changer. And ever since then I was like, oh yeah, I want to learn all I can about fish and do science stuff. So I think my family was not super shocked. They were super supportive, glad to know I was trying to do something that maybe had more of a advantage in the field than, writing or whatever. Here I am not doing anything really with my degree, but honestly, people ask me all the time, like if I regret getting a degree that I don't necessarily utilize all the time, but not a second. I still think it was the coolest experience. I loved everything I learned, and I'm still super passionate about the ocean, about nature and all that stuff.
So now you have how many siblings?
So I have one blood sister, but then I have 4 older stepbrothers and an older stepsister.
Okay.
As well.
So you're the biological sister of curiosity. Are y'all very similar? Are you very like different?
So looks wise, we look very different. She is my baby sister, but she's much taller than me. She's blonde, blue eyes. She favors my dad's grandma a lot. Whereas I'm much shorter and darker complected, dark hair, all that. You can tell we're sisters, but, or like we're related, but we definitely don't look like twins or anything of that nature.
So, but are y'all like, how far apart are y'all?
About 3.5 years.
Okay. So that's pretty close. So did y'all have similar interests growing up? Like, did y'all do the same stuff, or were y'all very much different crowds?
I don't know. Like, yes and no. Like some things we definitely really enjoyed. Like she likes nature like I do, and she is, she likes to be outdoors and do that kind of stuff, and explore and adventure and travel. And she's nerdy like me. She's one of the few adult girls that I still know that I'm like, hey, do you want to come play board games? And she'll be totally down. Yeah. So that's cool. I would say my sister was way cooler than me, honestly. Like she has always just had the super magnetic, bubbly personality where like you see her, you meet her and you're like, man, I want to be that girl's friend. Like my parents have always described her like lovingly as like a big ball of sunshine or like a yellow lab basically. Cause she's like all over the place and like just bouncing around from place to place, but she is super fun. Like, and people like crowd to her, you know what I mean? So anyway, way more popular than me. She was also way better at sports than me. Remember I said I don't run?
Right,
well, she did soccer and track and she killed it. Like she was incredible at both of them in both high school and college. So she was much more athletically gifted than I was as well.
Sure.
Obviously growing up, I think it was harder for us to get along, but once we started both hitting adulthood, we started to click a lot more and kind of develop respect for each other. And, you know, we're siblings, so we've had, you know, our ups and downs and everything here and there, but I'm really fortunate to say that even though she lives in New York, she's still absolutely one of my best friends today as like an adult.
That's great.
Yeah.
Did you find as the older sister? So by the way, there's, you know, I have reasonings why I asked.
Yes, of course.
Maybe not everyone listening, but hopefully by now you understand that I always build up and there's reasons. So do you feel like as the older sister that you had some like protective genes, like, you know, that like built in you?
Yeah, whether they were built in me or whether they just like developed because I just felt this innate sense of like needing to protect her. Yeah, absolutely. Not so much when we were younger. When we were younger, like, man, I was so mean. I was the worst, you guys. Like I was stereotypical big sister. Like we'd get in fights and I don't know what she's talking about. I definitely didn't do that, you know? So sorry, where were we at?
So we're talking about you being a big sister and protecting her.
Yeah.
Getting fights when you're little.
Yep. So we got in fights when you're younger, but I would say that really transitioned when we got to be around teenagers. So I know you heard me say earlier how I was like kind of angry and angsty as a teenager. And a lot of that did revolve around like my parents' divorce. And part of it is just, I kind of found out some hard truths about it when I was a teenager. And that's kind of what set off this chain of events as far as like me being angry. And it also kind of was like this little nugget of information that rocked my world in such a way that I was trying to figure out how to prepare to give the same nugget to my younger sister in a way that it wasn't going to rock her world quite as much as it rocked mine, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like kind of just the details as far as like how things happened and why things were the way they were. And I wanted to...
Now you're talking about the divorces.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just like some details surrounding it. Like, I don't really mean to call my parents out, but like infidelity, for example, I found out like, you know, it wasn't as amicable as I thought. And just finding that out as a teenager and kind of like the situations surrounding that, it just made me mad because I had felt like I had been lied to for years. It granted, not that you can tell a 6-year-old like some of the things that like some of the things that maybe happened or whatever, but at the end of the day, like it doesn't change how I felt about it. And that information is kind of what really like kicked my protection instinct into high gear, I think. And that was like the thing that was like, oh man, like how am I going to tell Leah? Like, how am I going to prepare her for this? Cause like, this was a big deal to me. And I think it might be a big deal to her. And like, how can I protect her from this like very real thing? Yeah.
Yeah. So I know we had always talked about like you've experienced trauma in your life. Is this the trauma that you're referring to, or is there additional trauma?
Oh, well, we could go down a laundry list. But yeah, no, I would say that was...
So part of this is, because we've always talked about, I think it's very important and for people to share, right?
Yeah.
Again, whatever you're comfortable with, like we've talked about before.
Yeah.
But I think it's important because it does, like, you know, we talk about the trauma and, you know, there's some great books like What Happened to You. I don't know if you heard about the Oprah Winfrey one. Dr. Perry, I think, is the co-author. And like everyone experience different level of trauma through their life.
Yeah.
And it's like there's like they've talked about like maturity stopping at certain things depending on trauma.
Yeah.
Like the time stops. Like it's very interesting how the brain works with all that. And again, one of the biggest things, and my dad, and I didn't know this, right? He like leaks information as I've gotten older. Same with my mom, but my dad, like his parents got divorced. There's some new information that just came out too recently, but they got a divorce and it hit him hard.
Yeah.
Like, and I didn't know until I became older how much that affected him. And right, like, you know, my current wife, I would say current, we have gone through a lot of stuff and we're still going through a lot of stuff. And it's just like, but you look at the children and you go, okay, I know, like, to be selfish, it's about me. It's about, you know, the relationships on the struggle bus or whatever. But at the end of the day, you do have to look at your children and say, okay, how is this going to affect them? Right. Because it is a big traumatic experience. And depending on the age, it affects you, you know, differently. Yeah. So, again, whatever level of comfort, but the biggest thing, like I said, is, you know, just like, right, science or a system is the output, right? Is like being able to show the resilience, right? Yeah. So, you know, that's why I find it's important. We talk about your background, talk about trauma, and then talk about your success, you know, and overcoming that. Absolutely. So again, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, you know, you have the floor and the limits on that.
Cool. I'm actually kind of excited that's a weird way to put it. That maybe isn't the right emotion, but I'm thankful, I guess, to be able to talk about some of this stuff because I rarely do. And I think it is important to talk about this because it has been a taboo subject for so long. And so many people don't want to talk about their mental health or like their traumas or their struggles. And like, that's not helping anybody. I'm not saying like go unload all of your stuff to like, you know, your buddy at the bar or whatever. Yeah. But like, I mean, it's important to recognize, that people have gone through some difficult things and how to work through those. So yes, I would say my parents' divorce is definitely one of my bigger life traumas that I have gone through. So I'll say like I was trying to find a good therapist for years and I finally found one about like 2.5, 3 years ago. And it's only then when I started meeting with her, because I knew I had some like anxiety and depression. I promise I'll circle all this background. Yeah. I found out I had some anxiety and depression, which shocker. But for years, people just kept trying to like give me medicine and they weren't actually trying to have a conversation with me, which I loathed and hated. I was like, nope, I just want to talk to somebody. That's what I need. So she sat down and she started just talking to me. Tell me about your childhood, just basic questions. And it helped me realize that I had a lot of unresolved trauma. And I actually got diagnosed with childhood PTSD, which I'm very ignorant, or I was very ignorant in the realm of mental health, because to me, PTSD was something you could not have unless you were like at war, you know, like it just, or unless you had, you know, been kidnapped and tortured or something crazy. Like I just didn't realize how trauma could present itself in like really bizarre ways. And I think that just talking and learning more about the brain and the way trauma can pop up in your life, like has opened my eyes immensely. But anyway, going through this, and after I got diagnosed with PTSD, I went through my kind of my big list of things in my life with my therapist. And so for me, like there were 3 to 4 like super major events in my life that I just changed me, like for one way or another. So one was my parents' divorce for sure. That was like kind of the first one, and one that happened when I was the youngest. One that this one still surprises me that this was traumatic, but it makes so much sense when like I actually sit down and think about it. When I was in 3rd grade, I had an incredible teacher. Her name was Miss Hetz. And without getting so far into it, she got very sick or was very sick. And as you know, how old are you? Like 9 or 10 when you're in third grade? Like it's something that we knew she was sick. I don't think we knew how sick she was. But when my mom and other people had to start coming in to sub for her and she'd be gone for weeks, like it was serious. So just to let you know, she had leukemia. Okay. And I honestly, when I was that age, remember thinking like this teacher was in her 50s and 60s because she had like lost a lot of her hair and her eyes, you know, had kind of changed color and things. She was my age now. She was 32, 33 years old.
Wow.
She taught our class for the whole year and she ended up passing about a month after we graduated or whatever from third grade. And it was the first funeral I went to. And it just like, I'm sure you can tell in my voice, like I still have a hard time like talking about my third grade teacher dying for some reason. But it like really impacted me in some kind of way where like it was the first time I remember experiencing death, I think. And it's still something that like I struggle with as an adult. Like I do not have a great or healthy relationship with death. It's something I'm like trying to work on, trying to work through. It's hard for me. Like I don't even like little bugs and like roadkill and stuff. Like I can't handle that stuff. I don't know why, which is interesting coming from the person that's what they want to do forensics. So, you know, but yeah, so that was, I would say that was another one that was super impactful. These next two are pretty tough too. I'll talk about the easiest one first, even though it's out of chronological order. So I was engaged once before my current engagement. And that failed kind of epically. And it was very shocking and surprising to me. Like it kind of came out of nowhere. And that was something that just destroyed me and my self-worth, you know, as like a 25, 26-year-old adult. That was hard. And then the fourth one, which probably first time I'm like telling anybody outside of therapy about. So there's that. I actually was sexually assaulted by somebody I considered a friend in college. And it really was horrible and sucked and whatever, but that is something that happens way more often than people want to talk about. And I think it's important to talk about it and address it. So.
Yeah. Well, Rachel, I know I do, and I know everyone listening appreciates you sharing, and we know how tough that is. And that takes a lot of courage, a plethora of courage to do. So do appreciate that. Again, right. I think it's important because a lot of people, like you said, they hold that in, even in today, when you have all these ads and you have the months that celebrate, you know, being able to have these discussions, and just people still to this day, they don't, and it just eats away at you, and you get older and it gets bigger inside and it gets bigger. And sometimes you have these subconscious actions that go off and you're like, why did I just do that? I don't know why. Like finding the root cause is really pivotal. And so again, I mean, I think that one of the things you said is understanding that there is importance in medicine. Again, right, having the kids, I do. But there are some times where the conversation is huge, and seeking that support and the right tools for the mental health, right? And it's different for everybody depending on their circumstances. So again, really, really appreciate you sharing that. I know that's tough. So really appreciate you doing that. I hope now, because, you know, one, and, you know, John, having a good support system. So hopefully you recognize that we are here to support you in any fashion. And Katie.
Yes.
I know Katie's probably, hopefully Katie listens. So what's up? Shout out Katie.
What up?
Again, really appreciate sharing that. So this all happened, right? So I think the one, all of them were prior to graduating college, except for the engagement, right?
Correct.
Okay. So we're going back to the college scene now. Mm-hmm. So we did, Rachel grew up Midwest-ish town, more center almost, right? Iowa.
I mean, I feel like it is right smack dab in the United States, like just boom, right there in the center.
Right in the middle. So did some hunting, fishing, loving every day. Did some cheerleading, student, How did you?
Stuco, student council, which I guess is a new hip term. It's very rare people tell me that I'm cool, so I'll take it.
Did a lot of activities. Tried out for track, didn't do so well. Did go bowling with carb loading on some lasagna. I love that. I'm gonna remember that the rest of my life. So I did that, and then so this is all Midwest. So where did you actually go to college physically?
Okay, so I told you I grew up in Festus, Missouri. I went to college at actually the 13th oldest college in the United States. It's called the College of Charleston, real original, in Charleston, South Carolina, or we would call it C of C.
So how did that even come about? Were you just like, looking up where the best marine biology?
You remember the angsty teenager that needed to get out of the house? Uh-huh. She decided Missouri wasn't big enough.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny because I don't know, like we went and looked at all these colleges locally and I just was not inspired or loving the options. And I don't know what I had in my head as far as collegiate life at the time. I didn't really have a set standard, I guess. I knew I didn't want to. My biggest thing, to be honest, that I cared about was student to faculty ratio.
No, I mean
I know that
legit.
sounds
that's
silly,
super nerdy and legit. I love it.
But the reason I cared about it is because I went to private schools my entire life, right?
Yeah.
So my biggest classroom of kids maybe had 26 in them, right? So I get that at every university you're probably going to have some lecture hall, but if it could be 120 people or less and keep all my other class sizes about what I had in high school, to me, that's ideal. I knew I worked better that way. I knew that I did a lot better with one-on-one with my professor.
Right.
If I had questions, that's just, don't put me in a room with 300 people and expect me to do, that's just, I'm not going to succeed that way. So that's what I cared about. College of Charleston had that. They had D1 basketball and cheerleading and stuff. So that was something I was interested in. Marine biology is why I went, which they have an excellent program there for both the undergrad and their master's and doctorate marine bio programs are pretty great too. So yeah,
How long were you there?
4 years. Yeah, I did graduate in 4 years. So I was there from the fall of 2009 to the spring of 2013.
Wow. Okay, so the big question is, we're now in Florida. So where was the transition directly to Florida, or what was the transition after the graduation?
No, it took me a long time to make it down to Florida. So, went ahead and got my marine biology degree, graduated, things are great. Then I was kind of stubborn and I loved where I lived. I loved Charleston, South Carolina. It's still one of my favorite cities. I hate that it's gotten so big lately. But it's great city, super beautiful, super historic, fantastic place. I didn't want to leave. There were not a lot of marine biology jobs out there. So I kind of was just working random jobs. I worked at Michael Kors and Forever 21. I was an event bartender for a while. I taught bartending for a while. All the while, which is funny, at the time, there were some local breweries cropping up. And I'm like, wonder what it takes to work there. That'd be interesting. Maybe I'll work at a local brewery. But that was just, little random thought that never really came into anything while I was there. Eventually, I was just so worn down and my mental health was kind of tanking, although I still didn't know why. And I was like, you know what? I need a change. Let me try and utilize my degree. I remember my my fisheries class talking about this job called being a fisheries observer. And so basically there are these jobs on both the West Coast and East Coast where fisheries biologists go out with the fishermen to collect and record fishing data. So as far as both the catch and the bycatch, and then all of that data gets sent to NOAA and our government, and that kind of helps track our fishing populations as well as maybe anomalies as far as currents changing or the temperature or salinity changing or things like that. So I looked into that. I applied for the job and within 28 days had to move from Charleston, South Carolina to Coos Bay, Oregon. And I did because I'm crazy. Thank you for my parents helping me make that enormous journey. That was insane. And helping me find an apartment. It was the craziest month of my life, but it was awesome. And I loved it. I did that for about a year on the West Coast. And I kind of went back and forth doing fishery stuff. After I worked out there for a while, I did end up being engaged to the first guy. Name's not worth mentioning. So he and I were kind of like going to get back together and move to New York so that he could go to school up there. So I moved back to South Carolina, just south of Charleston, another really pretty little town called Beaufort. Oh. If you're familiar with Full Metal Jacket, that's right by Parris Island. So it's right there. Then I came down here on vacation to visit my dad. Next thing I know, my fiance is like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, this sucks. I can either move back to Missouri or stay here in Florida as a marine biologist. The choice was pretty easy. So I stayed in Florida. I lived in a camper with my dad in the KOA off of 10 in Milton.
I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, I lived there for the first 8 months that I lived
fantastic.
here. Yeah. So I got a job working for Florida Fisheries and Wildlife. Oh, wow. So I did that for a short period of time. And that's when I had like my quarter life crisis. And I was like, oh my God, this field doesn't pay. Holy moly, what am I going to do? Like, I can't support myself on love for the environment, unfortunately. So that's when I started working for a brewery in Navarre called Yield Brothers. I was managing up front, and then I'm super nosy. So I was sticking my head in back, kind of interested in like what they were brewing and the process and all that. And so I kind of transitioned out of marine biology when I transitioned to Florida, not necessarily out of want. It was sort of out of just necessity because I was here in the area. I was competing for jobs and very, very low paying entry level jobs, might I add, against people that had like their master's and their doctorate. So like in that moment, I was like, all right, crap. I'm here, right? Like, and I only have my bachelor's. So I either spend a bunch of money that I don't really have and go back to school and then end up right back where these people are, or I can just do this and hope to work up. But like the chance of me getting these jobs is less because I don't have the schooling that those other people have. So it was just like this weird caveat where I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Kind of freaking out. And I just decided to risk it, cut my losses. And I was interested in brewing and beer at the time. I was like, you know what? Let's do this. If we're going to do it, let's just put the marine stuff on hold and go for beer.
Go for beer.
Yeah.
Hops.
Yes.
And greens. So I'm very curious, you said you're sort of being nosy or whatever. How did they like just say, hey, cool, do you want to be like an intern and do this? Or did they say, hey, we had some people cut out, we need you to jump in? Or how did that work? I mean, how were you just able to go ahead and pursue and actually get like that job?
So I think a lot of it was good timing, persistence, and then a little bit of luck. The good timing in as much as this was a fairly small brewery. They hadn't been open that long. We were only doing 2-barrel batches. So a barrel is 31 gallons. So like that's only 62 to 64 roughly gallons of beer. And for those, like if you don't know, like the way we reference kegs. So like a big, like the big party keg that you get at a frat house or whatever, like that is called a half barrel. So that fits 15 and a half gallons. So 2 of those is 1 barrel. So basically we could get 4 kegs off of a single batch without loss too, right? So, so part of it is just being in a smaller facility. So there's just really one head brewer and then he had an assistant. So it wasn't like a huge operation where I had to like fight tooth and nail to get in. In addition to that, the head brewer, we talked together. Like, I think he enjoyed talking to me because I took an interest in his craft.
Right.
You know, like I wasn't like, oh yeah, I like beer. I was actually I think I just asked the right questions and smart questions, and I was trying to view it from a scientific point of view.
Sure.
And I think he liked that. And so he was just like, I'm here. If you want to come in, brew anytime, you're more than welcome.
Oh, wow.
You know, so it was a very, like with him, very open door policy. Then as far as the owners, I don't think they really knew who I was or cared much about me. But then when they heard or found out that I had a marine biology degree and they knew that I had done things with science and, you know, could follow procedure, if you will. You know, like I'm not going to just go in there
Here's
and do
my head.
something
Here's my
chaos.
arm. Like,
yeah. Like I think they kind of were more interested in having me start taking on more roles in the brewery. So they kind of approached me once they knew I had that background and were like, hey, you know science. You want to like maybe apply some of that to the brewery and learn. And as it happened, the head brewer, not long after I kind of accepted to do that, he ended up leaving the state, going up to Kentucky.
Oh, wow.
He and his wife had just had a grandbaby, and he used to teach pilots. Like he was a pilot instructor, I think, for the military. And he had gotten a job up there and said they were close to family. So it was good for them. We had someone else come in and kind of help me oversee the brewing operations, but it was basically sink or swim. You're the head brewer now kind of situation.
Yeah.
And I do very well under pressure. So I read books and I scoured articles and I asked as many questions as I could. And, you know, it's still a learning process. I mean, to this day, I've been doing beer commercially almost 8 years.
Wow.
And it's still a learning process, you know, it's still something that I am researching, you know, constantly every day, but I definitely hit the ground running, and I know that all the hard work I did is the reason that I'm still doing it 8 years later.
So we talked a little bit before this. So we talked about beauty, right? And sometimes beauty is a blessing and a curse. Did you find, like you sort of said that, right? Like, oh wait, you know science. Did they not initially, because they're like, oh, you have a look. Maybe it's not like, you know, there's nothing going on. It's just the looks. So, did you have to overcome that? Do you feel like, or was that just let me rephrase that. Did you, as that career field, right, go, hey, take the front, like the back, don't worry about it. Was there a stereotype? Not a negative one. It just happens to be that way, especially, you know, where we're at. Like, did you feel that anyway? Like you had to overcome that in that situation? Or was that just a different thing in general?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have. I would say, for as great as this industry has been about making me personally feel very welcomed into it, I would be lying if I said that in every field, honestly, that I've probably worked in, I've had some kind of, I mean, I don't know how else to say it, some kind of sexism come into play. And whether it's, you know, when I was on the commercial fishing boats, people looked at my stature and they're like, good luck. Yeah, okay, you watch me carry this 75-pound scale and sling it over the side of this boat. I will. Like, thank you. You know, tiny but mighty. Yeah. And honestly, one of my favorite things is to prove people wrong. Like, doubt me. Please, go ahead. I'd love you to do that. Do me a favor and doubt me.
Yes.
So yeah, I have experienced that. At that first brewery specifically, yeah, I think they just thought I was just some cute young girl that didn't really know much about anything. And then when they started to talk with me, they're like, oh, okay. I will say, and this isn't meant to come across anyway, but I did feel a bit of like pressure from them to be kind of the face of some of the stuff, which is fine and well and good, but I don't want to be a token brewer. I don't want to be a token character in your business. Like, if you're going to be interested in me as somebody who's going to potentially work and create and craft for you, I want you to want me because I'm the best at what I do, not because I'm the best chick or because I'm nice to look at or whatever. That's not to say that like that's not a double-edged sword, because there's been plenty of beer festivals where like people come over and everyone and their mom's like, can I carry something for you? Can I help you get your stuff to your table? And I'd be lying if I didn't take advantage of that. Kegs are heavy, man. Equipment's heavy. Like, you think I want to carry that all by myself? No. And I promise you, any of the guys, if you were to ask them if they wanted help, I promise you, they probably wanted help too. They just don't. Unfortunately, most people don't see these big, burly, bearded guys and think, maybe I should help that guy. Yeah. Sorry, guys, that's just unfortunate. I'd help you, but.
So are you familiar with Malcolm Gladwell? He wrote Outliers, Tipping Point, David and Goliath, and a book called Blink.
So I'm familiar with those titles. I didn't realize that was the name of the author.
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell. So it's interesting. He writes a lot of books, and he does sort of like a theory, and then he'll find some studies. Yeah. Blink is really good. So Blink talks like there was some study about all COs are like 6'1" and over, or something, like there's like a high percentage. The reason being that is, he talks about marketing and face and all that stuff. And there's sometimes like there is a pro of saying, hey, I have someone that, is a badass brewer, but they're also, what in society is considered an attractive person. So it's a good marketing thing too, right? So that to me, like it's, like you said, it's a double-edged sword, but there's, it's like a win-win for a company, right? Like, because there is a face, right? There is humans, like by nature, look at something as a symmetrical. They have this thing from their parents that they consider beauty, right? You go to somewhere else and like, they have the big lip thing and ear thing in different cultures. You know what I'm talking about, right? So depending on where you come from, they'll look and go, okay. And then that's either a draw and or, something else that catches their eye. Then they read, oh, X brewery, that's cool. That person works there. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that's a very interesting subject. And even like different colors mean different things in different cultures. Yeah. So I think that's like, it's fascinating to me. So that was a really good book. That's why I was just wondering if you've read it or heard about it, but it just talks about all of those different instances of like, there is science behind that, there's science behind that. So I think that's important, but yeah, I think it's interesting because there is, to be honest with you, I don't know if it'll ever go away because I don't know if that'll ever go away. Like it, just from an aspect of the color and the dress and then all of those things, right? There's just some historical things like, why buttons are reversed on women's shirts?
I feel like I'd been told this at one point. Isn't it because the woman used to dress the guy and like, right? Yeah, so like it was facing the same way as her because she wasn't wearing it herself.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Like, I mean, there's just some stuff that's like, that was built in.
Yeah. Or like high heels were actually made for men to put their feet in the stirrups so their feet wouldn't slide out of the stirrups when they went to battle.
That's why the boots have the big, that's pretty cool. I've watched a lot about boots recently. That's a whole different subject. I need some boots. Really, my feet are all jacked up. So anyways, no, I think that's fascinating. Okay. So there was some challenges to overcome that. So how long did you work at that brewery?
Sorry, I'm trying to think of my timeline here. At least just shy of 2 years, I think. I wasn't brewing the whole time for them. I brewed for them for at least a year and a half. And then I made the transition to where I met you and where probably most people locally know me from, which is Third Planet Brewing.
Holler.
What up, Third Planet?
What up, Third Planet? What up, Fran? So you went from 2 years. Now, how did you get involved with Third Planet?
By the grace of Brian Detweiler, honestly.
We love some Brian, don't we?
Yes. So what happened is things kind of went in a very different direction at Yield than where I was wanting to go. And so we split ways, I don't know, in like April or May of 2018, I think. And granted, I will say the brewery scene is a lot smaller here at the time too. So like, I know we've got like all these brewery options here locally. That was not the case back then. Okay. Like we did not have 25 local breweries in the Panhandle. We had like maybe 5 or 6 and none of them really needed help.
Right.
So I kind of had just gotten into brewing. I'd only been doing it like, maybe a little over a year, and loved it. I didn't want to get out of it. And I just was willing to send out an email. So I kind of just reached out to my local brewing friends. I was like, hey, I need a job and I will literally come scrub your floor if, or work in your tap room, whatever you can do to put me near beer. I'll take it. And I'll never forget. I got a text within like 20 minutes, and Brian Detweiler, by the way, is one of the owners, and he's the head brewer for Third Planet. So if you keep hearing me mention him, that's who he is. And so anyway, he sent me a text back. He's like, we just got a canning line in. Can't talk right now. We'll reach out. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I mean, and I waited, and then within 72 hours, he sent me another text. He's like, hey, do you think you can come in this week for like an hour or two and we can sit down and chat? And within a week, I had a job. Wow. I don't even know if I sent him a resume, to be honest. That's awesome. Which, thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, he was willing to, and I say this like, he was willing to take a risk on me. Cause I was a head brewer for a very small little brew pub, but Third Planet was like more of a legit brewery, if that makes sense. Like they were brewing on a 15 barrel system. They had a lot bigger tanks. Like it was a huge step up for me in my career. And, I only had a year and a half of experience and really had just done a lot of autodidactic work at that point. And I hadn't really learned a lot from others. So he not only brought me in, but he was an invaluable kind of like mentor to have during my time there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. What year did the great event happen? The great heater event of what?
Actually, that wasn't long after I started, which just proves why I'm so lucky that I lasted as long as I did.
Robot foot after that.
There was a heat exchanger, and I will say it was top heavy, and I tried to move it across the brewery, started to fall. I thought I was Superman. I was going to save it, realized pretty soon I was not going to save it, but I couldn't just let this really, really expensive piece of equipment fall to the floor. So I tried to let it gently fall. You know what I mean? And my knee was sticking out and just sliced it.
Sacrificing. I mean, listen, that's pretty hardcore, right?
I gotta say, there are blood, sweat, and tears of mine in Third Planet, like straight up. All three of those have hit the concrete there. So
yeah, they're good people there. That's for sure. I'm happy, and I know that we want to discuss a little bit towards the end here, about the brewery business industry at large. But okay, so you did Third Planet, and then how long did you work at Third Planet?
I was there for 3.5 years.
Oh, was it really that long?
Yeah, dude. It was probably one of my longest stints somewhere. I still miss them.
Yeah.
I have the fondest memories, and I didn't really leave for any particular reason other than the fact that there wasn't a lot of upward mobility for me anymore. I'd kind of hit the top and I didn't want to stop. So I needed to find just different avenues that I could keep growing.
That makes sense. What was the next place that you moved after that?
So actually, it's another cool local brewery. They've been open. I think they're celebrating their 10th anniversary here in 2 weeks. It's Idle Hounds in Santa Rosa Beach.
Yes.
Yeah.
Idle Hounds. Yeah. They're for our local community. They're very popular.
Yeah. They are very widely distributed. Yes. And like I said, they've been around 10 years too. So I think just the longevity of the brand has really helped solidify them in our panhandle communities.
Yeah, what was their IPA? They had a very known IPA, right?
Boosh or White Bronco?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe
Divide and Conquer, maybe?
That's it. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
I was going to say, those are the top three.
I was getting there. Divide and Conquer. Yeah, I remember that when I first started my journey and was going like the masses with the IPA, Everyone loved the IPAs.
Oh, yeah. We would do a mango habanero version of Divide and Conquer when I was there. Oh, so good.
That sounds delicious. My stomach can't do it anymore. But anyways, And so while you were there, you actually did brewing where you head brewer, like alternate, like
No, so I just took on another like basic brewer position. So I was doing similar stuff to what I had been doing at Third Planet. So, but it was a lot more production heavy. And so by that I just mean that Third Planet as a brewery is very much split, where like they probably put 50 to 70% of all their product through their own tap room, and then they'll like distribute maybe 30 to 40% of it. Whereas Idle Hounds is almost like stark opposite of that, because they're very like warehouse based, and until recently they didn't really have like a tap room to go and like sit in per se. So they probably distributed like, 80 to 90% of their stuff, and only really kept 10 to 20% in house for sales.
I see.
So really what that meant for me is just like significantly more like canning, getting kegs clean, stuff like that. But it was fun because for Hounds Fest, I did get to create like a lot of my own small batch beers and stuff. Fraser Hansen is the head brewer and owner there. So that was cool. And he oversaw everything. I will say another benefit of working there is it was a new kind of brewing system for me. It was steam. So there are 3 like types of brewing systems you can work on. You can either work on electric, where it like plugs into the wall for your heat, direct fire, where you get it from gas for your heat, or steam, where you actually have like a whole like steam engine.
Oh, wow.
That like can generate instantaneous steam. So it was like beneficial for me to learn a new system.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So basically learning that different style of brewing at Idle was just like really beneficial for me.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that they had all those things. I just remember like when I worked at Third Planet, like dabbling, like, oh wow, okay, this is what you do with the hops, and then there's this, and then if there's the barley, and then if it's like darker, and then this gives it this particular flavor, and very much lighter side of that stuff, like very light. So that's pretty cool. I had no idea about the different sources of heat and how that works. So okay, so how long did you work at Idle Hounds?
So I was at Idle Hounds just shy of a year. And that's not for really any other reason than I kind of got a really good opportunity, which I'm still sort of seeing out right now. I was approached by a few local folks who own a couple restaurants down in 30A area, which if you're not from this area, that's like, it's a well-to-do area. Like it's
where the Truman Show was filmed.
Yes. Yeah, there's that too. But anyway, like people that have had some successful businesses who approached me because they are opening a brewery in Fort Walton Beach, and they wanted me to be their head brewer. And you heard me say that I was kind of looking for opportunities to grow myself, and obviously that's it.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate that honestly the opportunity like kind of fell in my lap, if I'm being honest. Like I was just doing my brewer job, like, not really thinking a whole lot about it. And when I was kind of approached about being a head brewer, I did it at Ye Olde Brothers, but like I said, that was a sink or swim situation. And at this point, it's like, I've got 7 years of experience under my belt now.
Right.
Like I know my stuff now.
Yeah.
I'm ready for this now.
Right.
So I met it with absolute elation, and I'm super excited. We hit a few, with all businesses, because business is tough. Like
right.
I know you've talked to a lot of other business owners on here, and we all know how difficult it can be. So we did hit a few speed bumps in the road as far as like getting open this year, but I'm not really looking at that as a detriment. It was a year for growth. And for me, I learned a lot, and I'm excited to kind of just jump in and help them get this place open. So it's going to be called Pirate City Brewing when we're finally up and running.
What about the in between?
You mean like what I was doing this past year?
Yeah.
What will I be doing? Oh, yeah. So that's fun.
But only because it has to play into the role of the brewing industry and
Yes.
how what the trend is.
Yeah,
what we're
no,
seeing.
totally.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to glaze over that.
No problem.
So basically, when I left Idle Hounds, I was under the impression that Pirate City was going to be like up and running in spring of 2023, which sounded great. Gave me a couple months to kind of gather everything, really solidify recipes, and start cranking out some beer. That did not happen, and that's okay. But basically, there was a third party involved with Pirate City that had to basically fizzle out in order for everyone to move forward. So that was definitely one like caveat that like slowed us down, one little road bump. And then another is my owners decided to kind of take over another local brewery here in Niceville that was kind of on its last leg, for a better term. Like, I don't want to say it was failing, but it's just in kind of a inconveniently located spot in town.
Yeah.
And since I was there the past year, can say like, yeah, it was a tough spot to be in, a tough spot to work in.
Sure.
So that was called Strange Colt. So my owners acquired Strange Colt, and then my job this past year for a while was to kind of oversee 3 breweries. Then one we kind of split ways with. And then I was in charge of overseeing everything at Strange Colt, as well as doing Pirate City stuff. And it was a huge learning experience for me. The location is tough. It was a brewery that was already having a difficult time in our area. I will say, like, it made me take a step back and think like, how could we have done things differently? I guess I should preface, by the way. So we opened last November under my owners. We were in a year-long lease, and we actually we didn't end our lease early, but we decided to close our doors early. It is August the 13th, Friday the 13th.
September.
It is September. Thank you. Hey, man.
Don't take the month away.
I know. We were just talking about how time goes way too fast. So sorry, it's September 13th. And I had been there since last November. So we did decide to close our doors early. I will say that's unfortunate. It's never fun to be part of something that like didn't work out, right?
Sure.
Like no one likes to say, well, that didn't work, like no one likes that.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to utilize it, like I said, as a learning experience, and to grow from that. Plus, I think even the breweries that are like top tier are really struggling right now.
Well, and there's a famous thing, right? And I think you're to be honest with you, you're living it, but it's fail forward, right? You're failing forward. So, and maybe fail is a strong word, but in some instances things fail, right? And a lot of things happen out of people's control, and it's how you interpret that and how you live with that and how you react to that. And do I continue to go forward? Do I sit and resonate or not ruminate and like just be very negative? Or like, do you take that and go, okay, here's some things like you just said, here's some things I'm in my brain learning, like, okay, if I see this continued trend, I'll make sure we're not going down that path again. Right. Like, and then how can we change that to not go down that in the first place?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I think the only way you can really, really learn something is, through failure or making mistakes, right?
Sure.
Like, that's why it's very hard for me as a perfectionist to like accept that and admit that, because I don't want to make a mistake, right? Like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to give myself grace too, because at the end of the day, like, I can honestly say that I really did do everything that I could have done to try and make that place successful.
Yeah.
I did. And I can walk away feeling good about it and with a smile on my face, because I know that. And I feel like, I did everything I could to make it work. It didn't work, and that's okay. And now I can take these little tidbits of information and apply it to the next thing and make sure things work differently.
So you said you listened to the Todd and Corey.
Yeah.
And Todd even said there's just some locations that have had difficult time. I don't know if you remember that part.
Yeah,
He's
no,
like,
actually, it's hilarious you're saying that, because as I was listening to it, because I knew I was going to come on and chat with you, I was like, if you name drop Strange Cult right now, I'm going to laugh so hard, because honestly, so the way it's, by the way, for people listening, so this building is in a really, really small parking lot that like you can't turn around in at all. I don't even know really how like a big commercial truck can really get in there. Like they can't.
It's like Austin Powers in the hallway. Do you remember that little golf cart?
Yes, yes, it's exactly like that. And so basically, it's also behind an optometrist office, and optometrist office are open from like 8 to 5 every day during the week. So sharing that teeny tiny parking lot, like it was so hard to open anytime before 4 p.m. because like people would have nowhere to park. And then it's in like it's so tucked back from the road. I just think that a lot of people don't even see like the flashing neon sign for it. You know, it's just kind of.
And that other parking lot next to it, there's a ditch, if I'm not mistaken, because I've jumped over it before. I had to park in the other and like jump over to walk to it.
Yeah.
I can't remember what's on that side. Is it the vet or?
The vet and the Teal building, if that's the one you're talking about, or they have like the little strip mall.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I mean,
side.
it just stinks, right? And so there's only so much you can do, again, right? Outside of your control.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Or like, for example, once I had gotten in there and actually looked at some of the infrastructure of the brewing equipment and the CO2 lines, and like the way some of that was just like installed from the get, it just wasn't. Could it work if you had to make it work? Yeah, sure. But like now that I've done this for 8 years, was it really feasible and meant to be a brewing setup?
Right.
It made things difficult.
So now with the Pirate City brewery opening up, is that going to have a tap room, or is that just a warehouse type?
No, it's so they are looking to do both. So kind of like Third Planet, I mentioned they're kind of 50-50, 60-40 with like doing a lot of their stuff in the tap room and a little distro. That's kind of the model we're trying to go after as well. My owners have made it very clear that they want it to be like a local gathering place, sort of, you know, how Third Planet has been able to generate that here, how Odd Colony and Gary's and Perfect Plain have been able to generate it in Pensacola. It's kind of the same thing that we're hoping to accomplish, where we'll have a tap room that you can actually sit and hang out in. We're going to have a permanent food trailer, which will be nice. So like, we're not going to necessarily have a bunch of different rotating food trucks, but we'll have our own permanent food truck that you can get food from. And then what's really cool is we'll be able to get like guest chefs to come in and out, like, and provide them the food. So like, if we wanted to do an Oktoberfest, we could make all German food, or if we wanted to do, you know, a sushi rolling class, we could do something like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a cool idea. And then what's also interesting is we have a pretty large piece of property next to the property that the building is on. And we also have a bunch of shipping containers. So the idea is to like pave it, line it with the shipping containers, cut into said shipping containers, and create like lounge seating.
Oh, wow.
So it would be like open air lounge seating, but you have, you know, like a roof or somewhat over your head. And that area would be something where we could do like cornhole tournaments or have live music or what have you. And the part I'm really excited about is initially we were going to put the brewery inside the tap room, which that's a model that you've probably seen in some breweries. Like I think I mentioned Odd Colony and Perfect Plain just now. Like they have that where you can kind of like hang out and like watch or look at the tanks and see all the stuff. Whereas like Idle Hounds and Third Planet have an actual different facility.
Is that like Pensacola Bay Brewing, right? Because they have that big glass.
Yes, yeah, they have that too. But they at least have glass. Like when I'm saying like it's in the tap room, I mean it's like open air, so people can look at you like a zoo animal while you're working. If you can't tell, I don't necessarily love it. I wasn't upset about having one like that because I'll just plan to be there when we're not open, right? Like, you know, I can plan my time around that. But I am very thankful that we are actually looking at building our own little standalone building for the brewery itself. Cause that way I can like go tuck myself back in my little, little corner and be away.
So I know that there's been quite a few. In fact, there was one near Santa Rosa Mall that shut down. Was it called 850 Brewing? Do you remember that?
I know there's the 850 tap room
That one.
there. Yeah.
I think that shut down, if I'm not mistaken.
Really? I thought they were
ago.
still running. Now I know Fort Walton Beach Brewing closed, and there was like a homebrew supply store that closed.
Yeah.
But if
I could have
didn't
swore
know that. No, you might
now
be
you're
right.
making me question, but I could have swore that shut down. And then I know one stood up called Ivy something. No?
Ivy and Dale?
Ivy, no. Yeah. And that's not a brewery. That's just a tap room.
Right.
Right.
Yep. Little tap room, wine bar.
And then what's the other thing I was thinking? There was another one in Fort Walton, I think. So as you guys have looked at that and looked at the business plan, so the things that you just mentioned, you're looking at those as differentiators to be successful by standing that up. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, so part of this, I think, is just when my owners started this endeavor, there were no breweries in Fort Walton. Now there is one now, which is cool. It's called Woodfoot.
Oh,
and it's actually,
that's right.
It's actually
Warren.
owned by some of my good friends.
I like those guys, yeah.
I do too. Warren and Reese are freaking awesome. And their head brewer, Joel, is the man.
Yeah.
So like he's cranking out awesome beer, already winning like some medals and stuff.
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. That's right.
Yeah, dude.
That,
And best part is once Pirate City is actually up, you can walk between our breweries and it takes literally 3 to 4 minutes.
What? That's so cool.
Park once.
No
hit 2
way.
breweries.
Oh, that's really cool.
I'm super pumped. Where do you think I'm going to be taking my lunch breaks?
I see. That makes sense. Yeah, it's like there's in Huntsville, Alabama, they converted an elementary school. I don't know if you've ever been there. I can't remember what it's called, but they took this elementary school. And so I think they had 2 or 3 breweries in it, a pizza place, like a wood fire. They had a hatchet throwing. They had a speakeasy. You had to slide these lockers and get to. They turned an old basketball court into a ballroom. And I remember walking in, there's like all these old people doing ballroom. Oh
my God, I
senior
love
citizens,
that.
sorry, whatever. Doing ballroom dancing. And I think that's cool to have. It's sort of like the Hub in 38, but like that one's very small. Or no, it's not called the Hub anymore, is it? It's called something else. Shoot, sorry.
I know what you're talking about.
But I love that concept where you're able to like, you know, hey, I want to go to the boardroom and then I want to walk over to Woodfoot and then I want to walk over to Pirate City and like be able to like do sort of like that.
A communal thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. So I did want to touch a little bit, right? As you just mentioned, there's been a lot of breweries like across the board that are just shutting down. And, you know, like it's crazy to get into a market where things are shutting. It's, you know, it's reminiscent. I always think of like BlackBerry.
Right.
I wrote a paper a long time ago about that. They just did not see the trend and try to grow. So how have you guys approached that? Go, okay, we understand the industry is looking like this. Like, that's what I was asking. Like, do you think those differentiators are going to help, like, you know, be successful in that? Like, what have you guys thought about or thought through?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's where you're going with your previous question too. So like that, I'm not trying to discount anyone else in our area. Like I'm talking about doing outdoor stuff. Like Woodfoot has pickleball court and they're doing like some live music and stuff too. So that's super awesome. But yeah, I would say that one benefit that we have is there aren't a lot of breweries in and around that immediate area. And we're new, right? Like everyone likes something new, shiny, like, ooh, what's this? When's that coming? Like, would love that. Plus, folks in Fort Walton have always had to drive to get their beer, if you think about it, like one way or another. So I think a lot of locals are just like excited for that. As far as trying to differentiate ourselves and make things unique, you know, I know that my owners, like I said, were trying to create more of a community space. They do, before I throw out the family friendly phrase, I just want to say, like, that doesn't mean kids running around like causing chaos, like throwing balls at your face or spilling your beer. But we definitely wanted to create an environment where you feel like you can come and hang out with your kid. Like, we don't want you to feel like, oh, I would love to go there, but I can't because I've got my kids with me or something. You know what I mean? So my owners are also parents, so that helps. And so something that we're talking about doing to kind of like accommodate them is we've considered doing maybe some old arcade games in like one part of the brewery, which would be kind of fun. This is something I actually did back at Ye Olde Brothers, but no one really like utilized this skill with me again until I ended up back at Pirate City. But I make a pretty mean root beer, like non-alcoholic, straight up root beer. And kids used to freaking go crazy for it at Ye Olde Brothers. So they asked me to brew a root beer for Pirate City.
Nice.
And so the idea is we'll have that as an NA option, but then we're talking about like root beer floats.
Yeah.
Or, of course, my brain started going. I was like, well, if you get an ice cream machine, then we can make like alcoholic ice cream, or we could make alcoholic sorbets, or like, you know.
Right.
I just got way too excited and into it. So I think that's something that would be kind of cool and unique and different. I personally am trying to connect with people in the local area that maybe are outside of the alcohol industry. So like I've talked to like JoJo's Coffee about potentially doing like a coffee stout, coffee porter, like a collab with them. I am not at the point where I'm like really looking at a lot of labels, but I've had a dream for a couple years to work with Rihanna on a beer label. Like I would probably
shout out Mercy Tattoo Studio.
Yes, I would die. Like if I could craft a beer and have her create a label for it, like that would be really cool.
Yeah.
And then I'm also, I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to use a lot of my own personal contacts and personal interests to like generate just uniqueness to it. And I guess I'm really focused on like the beer side of thing and some events and things like that. But like brewing root beer, I would like to start brewing some NA ginger beer at some point too, just because I freaking love ginger beer, and I'll brew it for myself, if for nobody else.
Yeah.
I've done kombucha before. It's something I'm considering bringing back up there as well. I do a seltzer. I think right now, like we are talking about breweries that are failing or not failing or whatever, a lot of it is the business model, but I think some of it too is your willingness to maybe make stuff that doesn't excite you as a brewer. I'll be honest, making seltzer, it's sugar to water, you boil it for like 10 minutes, you knock it out, you add in yeast, and it's a day, right? Like does not take a lot of creativity necessarily to make that. However, as somebody, and I don't even necessarily like love seltzer either. Like this isn't something that I'm like guzzling down and drinking. Like I don't go and buy seltzer. Like, that's just not my thing. But I would be an absolute fool if I did not make seltzer.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of it is your willingness to adapt to the changing trends, honestly. Like there are some breweries that will say, I'm never going to make this style. It's like, okay, but you could be scaring away, or not scaring people away, but there's like a whole niche group of people that would like if you did something like that. I think another thing is getting too trendy on the opposite side of that, right? Like some people are afraid to do anything unique and different.
Right.
And then other people like, man, some of the beers that I see on the shelf, I literally have to ask myself, is this a joke? Like, is it April 1st? Because some of this like chicken wing beer, ranch beer, like, I'm sorry, but in no world of mine is that going to taste good. Now, granted, I haven't had it. So like, call me up, tell me I'm wrong.
Sure.
If it's gotten to be a point where I think brewers.
Did we talk about steak beer a long time ago?
Oh my God. Yes. Okay. But you want to know something? Yes, because I've been thinking about you a lot lately. So now that Strange Cult closed, I've been able to like have a little bit more free time and refocus back on beer and brewing and like recipe development. And my chef at Strange Cult, right before he left, he lent me a flavor I'm not gonna wow, that was a struggle. A flavor Thesaurus. That, I'm so sorry. I don't know what my mouth just did, but it did not speak words. A flavor thesaurus.
Yeah.
And so it's like going through different, it's more for food, but obviously like I take those flavor pairings and like put it into my brain and I'm like, ooh, that might pair well together. That would go good with this type of beer. And it's so freaking funny that you brought this up because I thought of you the other day because you've always asked me like, I want like a savory beer. Like I want like a steak beer, like a big meaty beer that I can have, you know, with like meat and potatoes. Like I remember having this conversation with you and I, for years have been like, I suggested a smoked beer and I had an idea the other day and it kind of came out of nowhere. I want to make okay. How do you feel about Hawaiian pizza?
Yeah, I'm down. I'm more of I lean more towards pepperoni and pineapple than ham and pineapple. Interesting.
Well, if there's a way I can maybe add like
or bacon,
fennel or like oregano or something to it. But I had this crazy idea of doing a smoked pineapple beer and maybe it would be like, because the smokiness is like the bacon and you'd have like a bacon pineapple type situation.
That sounds pretty good. I like that.
I know.
That sounds pretty good.
I know. No one take this. This is mine. I'm claiming it.
Hashtag Rachel.
But yeah, no, it's funny you bring that up because I was thinking about you the other day when I was going through like these savory options.
So I don't know if you know Third Planet started brewing root beer. Did you know
I did, yeah.
Do you know that BJ's Pizza Brewery? Ever heard of that? It's in it's a franchise. They are in Pensacola.
Yeah.
But we went to one in Vegas a long time ago on a station in Vegas. But and Riley, you know, the oldest, she would tear up the root beer, and it's the same thing. So I'm very happy to see that breweries are doing that because we've been such a fan of that, and it's great. Don't get me wrong, right? There's the bottled like sodas that you can get, and they're like tons of sugar in them. But I mean, again, it's kids and they're running around anyways. But yeah, like having a cool like root beer, ginger beer type deal. In fact, have you ever been to Pounders?
Yes.
You know, Pounders in Niceville. Yes. They have one of my favorite, and again, stomach and sugar, but like their ginger beer is amazing because it actually tastes like ginger. Like it's like a legit ginger beer and our soda, whatever. I should say that. I'm so sorry. Ginger soda. I'm not feeding my kids ginger beer. I don't know if that came across wrong.
No, I know what you meant.
Yeah.
If anyone's judging, like,
yeah, whatever. Pish posh.
Be gone.
I mean, there is some, like, it is few and far between to actually find ginger beer. By the way, they're not as prevalent as they used to be.
Yeah, I don't know if the one I get is truly a ginger beer or more of a ginger soda. It does have a small amount of alcohol in it. But that's what I like. That's real spicy
it's called
ginger.
Like Fig Tree. Have you heard of that? I think it's called Fig Tree, the little bottle.
The Fever Tree?
Is that what it's Fever Tree?
Yes. Oh my God.
That one's legit.
I could drink like a 12-pack by myself in a day.
You know what I really like that you mentioned, and I thought about this a long time ago, is I think there's a pro and a con, and it'd be interesting to talk to Corey now that, you know, he's had his food truck for a long time, is having that sort of rotating kitchen, right? In other words, like you basically have the setup and you allow other people to come in and use that. I think that's great because, you know, there's a lot of movies. I don't know if you've seen The Bear, that's a TV show, but there's a lot of movies out there.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
Love it. So good. Yeah, chef. Anyway, so it's like, I like that idea. I think that's a great idea. I wonder from a logistics standpoint what the heartburns would be, you know, initially of people bringing like their own food or whatever else. I have to bring my own spatula and knife that I normally have, or like, you know, like that balance between what would be supplied and then what they bring.
Yeah. It's definitely going to take some time to figure that out.
Yeah.
Fortunately, my owners are restaurant people and they've been doing this for over 20 years each. And there's two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's their department. Yeah. They can figure that out. And I'm excited for it. Yeah. But as the head brewer, I'm also thankful that it's kind of like like off my plate.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because it does sound like it could be complicated and logistical. It'd be like, you know, contract brewing or something, you know, like bringing somebody in.
Are you guys doing guest beers or no?
So we're going to have over 40 draft lines. I know initially we talked about trying to fill up our stuff with as much of our own personal things as we can, right? Yeah. Like, so we are going to try and limit guest stuff, But ultimately, I think we may bring some guest things in. So, sorry, my brain's going all over the place. What I should say is, you asked about something unique and different, and I'm assuming this is still the plan because it kind of was always the plan. My owners are also into wine. Like, they have a really good touch with like the wine world because again, like they've been in the higher end restaurant industry for years and years and years.
Sure.
So we are actually planning to carry wine on draft. Now, I'm not making it or anything. But we would have wine on draft, and they do that now. It is not as common, but a lot of places like to do that because it's not carbonated. I know it sounds like it might be carbonated, but you just push it really, really slow, with either nitrogen. I think it's usually pushed with
chilled. I'm assuming chilled, right?
Yeah. It's
Don't
usually,
they have that in Pensacola? There's a place, right? You can do, it's like wine, like you do X amount of ounces.
Yes.
And
So this would actually like be behind our bar though. So like it would come out of a tap, just like a beer would. And I love the idea because I've worked in this industry long enough to have thrown away so many half bottles of wine, and they go bad. And especially at a brewery, like you have less people that come specifically to drink wine at a brewery, which is not surprising, but normally a lot of breweries still want to carry the wine option, right?
Yeah, of course.
So you don't want to limit yourself. And I just love the idea of doing it on draft, A, because you can definitely temperature control it. B, the waste though, like there's very limited waste, right? With a keg, because you don't have to stress about the fact that there's a bottle of Malbec sitting there for a week and then you toss it,
Man, yeah, I'd be curious to see how that's like. There's all those things on Shark Tank that are like, I don't know if you saw like the little square kegerator that somebody had and preserved it. And I think they've had some stuff like that with wine too, that like preserves it. It's like a long term instead of a bottle, because you lose all the, once that gets oxidated or whatever the appropriate terminology is, some kind of sealant. No, that's great. I love that. I love chilled wine. I'm not gonna lie to you. I love some Cab Sav. Every once in a while some white wine, but I can only do so much.
I was gonna say, I don't know what temperature they would be like chilling some of the reds at. Yeah. I'm not sure if all the logistics are how it's going to work, but that's the generalized plan.
You want to talk about the biggest differentiator, which I've never seen, and I'm sure it exists, but some draft champagne.
Ooh.
A lot of bubbly, a lot of carbonation.
Ooh, I like that.
Never seen it. By the way, for some odd reason, last 6 months, been a huge fan. Like that's what I usually drink.
Really?
Yeah, been buying. By the way, super expensive. Like, I don't know, I understand. But, I understand the process. So everyone's on Prosecco. And I'm like, okay.
I was going to ask, are you strict champagne guy? Or
no, I am, because there's a
too?
big difference between sparkling wine and champagne. And I didn't realize until I was researching it, because I'm flying a lot, I told you, for business. And I'm flying and I'm like, hey, do you guys have whatever? And they're like, oh, we have Prosecco. I'm like, I tried it. I was like, oh, this is not the same.
This is not what I'm looking for.
No, I don't know why. It's weird. And usually carbonation, especially in the plains, it's not so great. But yeah, I've been buying some like bottles of champagne, just celebrating life.
Yeah. Hey man, might as well.
So good though. But anyways, draft line, champagne.
Yes.
You're welcome, Pirate City.
I think that's great. And honestly, I'm such a sucker for brunch. So like if we could get some brunch stuff rolling in that food truck and some mimosas.
Juices.
Yeah.
Pretty easy. It's pretty solid. Yeah. That's a good, right? Because it's beer and wine. You don't have to worry about liquor and.
Right.
And
exactly.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever been somewhere. Again, don't know if it exists, but typically it's always wine.
Right.
Like in those places.
Yeah.
Maybe I think they've had some places I've been that had scotch like that or whiskey, but I don't think I've ever had. Now there might be complications because of the carbonation and all of that stuff. It might just like, but.
Well, beer's carbonated.
So
you push
soda.
that through the right. So
just saying.
I'm pretty sure that's 100% doable.
Again, you're welcome, Pirate City. I'll be the first customer to have one.
We can make that happen.
Even if it's just one. Just tell them like, hey, I went on. There's a stage line. Just let's make it happen.
You heard it here first.
That's right. No, that's really exciting. It's always those endeavors, right, for people that start businesses, and that's why we like to have people come on. And it's really cool that you have a different perspective as a head brewer. right, you mentioned like, hey, there's owners and they're really leaning on you for a certain aspect of that
Right.
and coming in and really like the formulation and having an understanding of your years experience and knowing like this is what's going on tap, and then like seasonal stuff is a big deal. And I understand. There's trends in a sense of seasonal. There's trends in a sense of I'm not gonna say ridiculousness, but I don't know, chicken wing beer. That's really and there's potato chips that do those kind of things too. And sometimes you're like, okay, they play with the flavor profile, right? Like cayenne pepper and blah blah blah. And now we have chili something. Completely understand that. I think that's fascinating. I'm really happy and excited, and it's the trials and tribulations that go on with Fort Wallen Beach and. As we've talked and discussed with multiple business people that have come on, with the wave of tourism, right? You have the people come in certain times and some people leave. And, if you can buy in or if you have the buy-in from the tourists and the locals, I mean, that's the solid deal. That's where you get the big check mark. That's the one thing is I'm very curious because I can't remember how many people travel over that bridge. Because it's all right there, right? Like back from the, was it 4 Points and the Holiday Inn is all right there. Rather than going all the way to Destin, through the strait, if you will, they come back over the bridge and just be able to frequent. Is the boardroom still there? Salty Duck, all those places, right?
Yes.
Is that general vicinity
yes.
we're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. So, do you know where Suds and Cinema is? The old movie theater. It's like the big white one right next to the parking lot, kind of at the front of Woodfoot. Type.
Is that where like Run Wild used to be? Like where the shoe store?
Oh, Run With It? Yeah, it was right. Right next to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's like the tallest building on Main Street, right? Because they have the big theater marquee and whatever.
Yeah.
So across the street, across 98 from there, you have that old car wash, and there's like the food truck situation.
Yes, I know that. Yes.
So we're the 2 lots behind that.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Isn't there a karaoke?
Yes, so that's the block or something. That's not super far.
No, not the block. There's it's like a Filipino food karaoke bar or something or type. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so. It's it's nearby.
That's great. Yeah, no, that is great that's all right there. Yeah, the Salty Duck. I think I want to say I went in there long. Man, it may have been when I was hearing like way back in the day. Like
I've only heard stories from friends. I have not ventured there myself.
So I have a lot of people. In the industry, like, I'm friends with, and they have sometimes their spouses work at these places. And so they go there, right? They'll do some bar hopping or whatever. And yeah, you're right. You have all the young folks go and that's good. I hate to say young man's game, but that's, I would love to go though. I have some friends still my age that still go to these things and I want to do that every once in a while. But again, right now I have to wake up and no matter what, 5:30 or 6 o'clock, there's no sleeping in, no such thing. So you just have to live with that big headache if you were to do that. Wow, that's really cool. Okay, so now that we talked about this and we're starting to get close to wrap up here, Rachel, what do you see like as far as forecast goes in the brewing industry? Like what are you seeing there? I mean, are we leaning more towards, okay, we've done this, right? We've saturated all the people and customers with all these flavor profiles, and now we've honed in on these, and this is where the brewing, if you want to do. Have you seen yes, right? It's smart to have some kind of rotating food. People don't want the same thing. There's the marketing instance. I'm assuming there's going to be some kind of pirate theme, maybe or maybe not.
Yeah.
The pirate side. So what have you seen? Like where do you forecast seeing the brewing industry going?
That's a really good question. And it kind of ties back into some of the things that we've been talking about. First, beer wise, everyone is soured and hopped out. So I'm predicting, and I know this because brewers, I'm starting to realize that like we make the trends, and that sounds very counterintuitive to not realize that, right? But the only reason the New England IPA came up was because a brewer was like, you know what? I'm going to try and do this a different way. And he did, and then it took off, and people who never drank IPAs before all of a sudden were drinking IPAs. And then everyone and their mom was doing that, or, someone perfected a fruited sour, and then it became super popular, right? And I think that I've noticed that a few years ago, brewers, myself included, were like, man, there's a lot of IPAs out. Man, there's a lot of sours. I just want a beer. I want a crispy boy. I want a Pilsner. And that's kind of what we started saying we wanted. And that's what we started drinking when we would be brewing these big sours and stouts and all this stuff. we were drinking light beer because that's what we wanted. And then we started to brew some more light beers because that's what we wanted. And next thing you know, like Crispy Boys is like the big thing right now. Yeah, at least I think it's kind of becoming more popular. Like people are really into Pilsners and like more traditional beer styles. And I think that the lager is coming back slowly. Yeah. And so it's all cyclical. I think it's just, like trends come and go. So beer wise, I think we're going to just start seeing more traditional beer styles come back. I think everyone's kind of longing for some kind of nostalgia in one way or another. So like whether historical recipes or utilizing local ingredients, like I really think that's going to become like the next hype thing, if you will.
I don't know if you saw, sorry, to cut you off there. I don't know if you saw, World of Beer shut down, right?
Yeah. So,
the interesting thing that I don't think we have here, and I could be completely mistaken, is, and I always have friends that come visit and they're like, I want to try as many local beers as possible. We don't have a place where we can go and go like, hey, come here. And like, you're going to drink all the local beers within a 60-mile radius at like one spot, right? Like you have all the Destin Brewery, the Third Planet, like every tap has like, so you can just sit there and go, oh, you want the locals special or whatever? Like here's 2 flights and you're going to hit 10 beers of all the local places. I think that would be a cool thing to do. Like, and again,
it would be awesome.
Yeah. Even the tap rooms, I don't think had that. Like the ones that were just strictly
not many tried to do that. And that it's interesting you bring that up because I always thought that would be a really cool concept as well. Especially, look, 2020 really, really sucked as a year, but because of the strain it put on breweries in the state of Florida, we all basically had to distro or die. Yep. Okay, like that was just gun to your head. That's what we had to do. So most everybody started distroing in 2020. And even though like it may not be the most feasible thing, even the ones that don't distro all the time, they still are in distribution. So my point is, I don't know if we ever would have been able to get Odd Colony and Alga and like all these other really amazing breweries in distro if like that hadn't happened. And I'm not speaking for anybody. I don't actually know what anyone's plans were for any of these businesses.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking how, when I first started in this industry, it was really hard to get any of the local beer outside of the brewery itself.
Right.
And just the availability of it now is awesome. And leading back to that, I think it would be even cooler now that there is the availability to kind of open a spot that would highlight like, oh, you want Pensacola beer? Like here, the 7 breweries. And
do you know what a dream come true would be as a consumer, right? Especially, I'm going to throw it out there. Chin's Liquor. Chin's Liquor has really good like local beers. I don't know if you've been... Do you know what I'm talking about?
Chan's. Okay. Yeah.
What did I say? Chin's? Sorry.
It's okay. I knew who you meant. I knew who you meant.
As you know, my pronunciation is terrible.
It's okay. Words are hard.
Names are okay. So how cool would it be if like, again, and maybe this is a point because the way that breweries are seeing it and they're willing to partner more is like, hey, let's do a 6-pack of local Pilsners. Like here's the Third Planet Pilsner. Here's the Pirate City Pilsner. Here's whatever. Boom. Here's a 6-pack. Let's do a 6-pack of Ambers. Here's a 6-pack. Here's the Third Planet Amber. Here's a Pirate Brewery Amber. So as I go and I know that I want to go get like a Doppelbock, help me out here. Doppelbock or like just dark beers in general. I can go get a 6-pack and it's like the local brews. Now, again, from a financial standpoint and distribution standpoint, I know that gets a little crazy, but people collab on single beers. How cool would it be to collab on like a 6-pack?
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? I think that'd be really cool. And now I'm like, oh shoot, now I get to experience. So from so you have the tap room, right? Now I get to experience guest beers and I'm getting those different people in the local area. But now if I want to go buy that or take it home with me, I'm traveling back, driving. My buddy does it all the time. He's like, oh dude, I grabbed, X amount of cans. I'm taking it back with me. Is like, I can go grab a 6-pack from all these different local breweries. I think that's a cool idea. I don't know how it'd work, but just throwing it out there.
No, I think you're totally right. I think it'd probably just have to be something that the store itself would do because they would still have to buy the beer from the distributor at wholesale like they normally do. But you know how like at Chan's and like Beach Liquors and stuff, you can buy like some singular cans.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, people make their own. Yeah, you're right. That's true.
Okay, well, yeah, they do make their own, but what if you had a cheat sheet and it said, hey, if you want like a bunch of local Pilsners, grab these, or like almost some pre-made mixed 6-packs. You know what I mean? That's a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I like to do. I mean, I'm speaking again from a consumer that doesn't drink beer as often as I used to. Again, digestive issues. It was funny you said that. I was actually, one of the questions I always ask for people that have gone through the different industries in the last couple of years was like, how did you survive COVID? And I think is that, so pretty much distribution to die is what you guys leaned on?
Yeah.
Where were you in 2020? Were you in?
I was at third.
Okay.
Yeah. And I will say like distribution is what honestly I think helped keep a lot of brewers employed. I can't speak for everybody, and I know it was state to state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I can't speak to anyone else's experience but my own. But the fact that like I had a job that I could wake up and go to every single day throughout that experience and throughout the pandemic, I was very, very blessed.
Yeah.
First of all, it's easy to social distance in a brewery, especially when there's only 3 or 4 of you.
Right.
We wore masks and we just like I said, we didn't drink after each other like we used to. Like we were just, we were conscientious.
What do you do? Like at church, you like wipe it and then just rotate the cup.
Yeah. Alcohol kills germs, right?
That's right.
But yeah, no. So I feel that I was very lucky and very fortunate and very blessed in as much as people wanted to support us. That's the thing. Like, people wanted to support us. People came. We almost set up like a McDonald's drive-through type situation. I'm sure you remember. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure we brought you beer to your car.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm lucky that there were so many people like you that did want to come in, that did want to buy 4-packs, because you guys are what allowed me to still come in every single day and make beer, because our tap room wasn't open. But because of the distribution aspect and because we were able to actually push beer out the door, like that saved us.
Yeah, that online thing was awesome. Like being able to go and order, like pre-order. And
sometimes I still wish I could get beer delivered to my house.
Well, you can. It's just more like
DoorDash. I mean, from local craft brewery.
I don't own it, and I don't know how people do it. DoorDash is out of control. I may or may not be influenced when I've traveled and it's late at night. And I'm like, can't drive because I participate in some adult beverages. I'm like, I really want something. There's nothing within walking distance. And I'm like, it's actually cheaper to Uber. I found this out. You can Uber like literally through a drive-through and back, which is hard to do on your order. Like when you go, but holy cow, I get the bill and I'm like, oh my God, I had like 5 tacos and it's like, $1 gazillion. Like, what just happened? Like, don't do that again. Like, and then you're like, okay, I need to prep next time, and then you don't. And then the next thing you know, you're like, oh no, I had 3 tacos and it's $1 gazillion. Like, what just happened to me? Yeah. So I think you can do, like, I think Publix does it. Like, other people will distribute and like get you that, but you're not getting the like.
It's not the same.
It's not the same. It's just not the same. Like in the local stuff.
I want like a beer man to come around like the local milkman used to. Like we'll exchange little glass bottles.
So cool. I love that idea. I do. A little sniff, Yeah, I love that.
It'd be awesome. Just get my weekly 6-pack. It'd be perfect.
Yeah. Wow. That's a good idea. So I'm curious now that we're getting towards the end, Rachel, from a life lesson perspective, right? Personal and professional. And some people, I'm sure you've heard answer, you listen to a couple, mix it together. Some people are separate. Feel free to do whichever is appropriate. But what is one thing that you found you go back to that just sort of is like a lesson learned that just keeps you at sort of your motto of life?
I guess I would say, as far as like professionally, and like in that instance, don't be afraid to fail and like make mistakes. And like I said, that I struggle with that as a perfectionist, but I've learned some of the best things and grown so much professionally from making mistakes or from messing up, right? Like, and I think that utilizing a mistake as a learning experience rather than like a hindrance is just something I try and like carry with me.
Yeah.
I think it kind of like inspires a little bit of hope and keeps you moving forward when you might be feeling like you're sliding back. So that's just kind of like a good thing to keep in mind that kind of keeps me going, keeps me rolling. And then I guess life advice. try not to get overwhelmed by what others think of you. That's something that it's my biggest struggle in this life. Like, I have found that like I've made myself miserable at some points in my life. And like, I felt so angry and frustrated when I've realized like I've been such a people pleaser and I've been such a doormat, and it, all goes back to that childhood trauma and just trying to like fix things and make things right and make things better. And so for me, I need to take a step back sometimes and realize that I think that people think about me more than they actually do. Both good and bad. You know what I mean? Like, I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean like I'll have anxieties and be like, oh, what's this person thinking about me? And guess what? They're not, So I think that's been a huge benefit to me. And then another thing to go hand in hand with that as well is just like try not to care. And that's hard. That's really, really hard. I think it's hard for everybody, but especially someone with my personality type. I want everyone to be happy. I want to help everybody. I want everyone to succeed and like live in sunshine and rainbows, right? Like I want that for people. And so sometimes I like will try and insert myself and help with the best of intentions, realizing that like that person didn't need my help. Actually, maybe I shouldn't have even been involved in that,
Yeah.
So it's something that I do struggle with, but I'm learning day after day. And something that I've really started doing recently that is fed into this is feed that inner child. Because I had the realization probably over the past year, I have been the same weird, nerdy little girl my entire life. Like, I used to ask Santa for a unicorn, okay, when I was like 4 and 5 years old. I knew they didn't exist, but like I really believed if I just asked him enough for it, I might get one. And I have always just really been a big lover and like somebody, like I said, sunshine and rainbows, and wants everything to be great. And I've always loved nature, and I've always just been a huge nerd. And I'm just realizing the more I embrace that and just do what's true to me, the happier I am. And the more those voices just start to kind of fade away.
Yeah.
Because I don't worry about if it's making anyone else happy, because I'm getting such a dopamine rush from doing the things that I genuinely love and enjoy that like I start to stress less and worry less about what others think. But it's a struggle, like it's difficult. It's something you have to work toward every day.
Yeah. Don't let me forget. I'm going to say, hey, I want to read that thing on the wall before I'm going to show you something for you.
Okay.
I appreciate that, Rachel. In fact, I think a lot of people, I was reading, Facebook. In fact, I think I'm going to take a step back and just make that all professional social media stuff. I find myself the death scroll. And some people are like, they're writing and they're like, oh man, they're doing whatever. And they're like, oh, what's making you happy? I just don't care about what other people think about me anymore. And it's made my life so much better, and I've like really started to focus on me. And I think that's great. I think that's a great a tool and a great mental path for people, because like you said, unfortunately, I think it's harder for some than others.
Yeah.
It has to, there's a pro and a con to that, by the way. Like if you were to do like the 5 whys, a root cause analysis of why I do that, from a personality standpoint, it's like, I'm a people pleaser, but like why? Well, I enjoy communication. I communicate with this person. Okay. How do I become more of an effective communicator and stuff? Well, I need to understand that person itself. So then there's a care piece of you, because it's part of emotional intelligence, right? If you don't care about somebody at all and you try to communicate with them, that comes across, right? So you're not going to be a really effective communicator if you just don't care about them at all. Some of the strengths are caring about other people, right? It's the thing that it's like a balance of going, okay, I'm not going to let that tilt me one way. Like I'm not going to let it make and drive my entire life and where I'm headed. It might influence me and I can control how much that'll influence me, but I'm not going to like let it be a detriment to me. Right.
Right. I think I think you hit the nail on the head, and you really like specified that and clarified that the best way possible, because I'm not saying like don't care what other people think, like, and go be a degenerate. Like, no. I'm not saying that. Okay. Like, I just mean don't sacrifice, your own self-worth for others. But just, I find too, because I like to help people, that helping others brings me joy. You know what I mean? And so caring about others brings me joy. And I think it brings a lot of people joy. Like if you look at people that are in any kind of social work or that volunteer, they always seem to just radiate a sense of happiness, and it's very contagious and it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's tough though. Like I've even found myself, unfortunately, a lot of people go through divorce or whatever, and I'll reach out to them because I enjoy it. I enjoy that. Sounds horrible, like you said earlier. I'm like excited, but it's because like I've known so many people have gone through it, right? And it's just like you see that, and you're like, okay, how do these other people deal with it? How do they come out in the good and the bad or whatever else? Which by the way, 99% is not great. Especially when kids are involved, as you stated earlier. Yeah. So it's like, I like talking to them, and just sometimes talking helps, right? It's just like, because sometimes I'm the third party, right? I'm not like in that inner group and they just want to have a conversation, but they're afraid because either they were friends with both of them or whatever. So it's sort of this like, hey, just somebody to have a conversation with. And I'm completely okay with that. And like, hey, how are you doing? What tools are you using? Cool, blah, blah, blah. And then bring up some other subject matter that may not be involved in that. Because sometimes that escapism is what people really need. Because again, they sit and ruminate, and ruminating is terrible. Reflecting is good, right? I always tell people this, like in person and writing. Reflecting good, ruminating bad. Ruminating is that like Alice in Wonderland going down the rabbit hole. Reflecting is like, okay, I see it. This is how I'm going to move on. What's positive, hopefully, and lesson learned. So I appreciate that. Those are great. Rachel, out of all the people who have come on, I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I know that you've shared a lot and really appreciate that. I think it's amazing to see somebody from the Midwest. I'm just kidding.
With teeth?
Hey, you can put a sentence together. But like it's like
barely.
You've come a lot and lived a big life for someone, your age, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's great that you had the opportunity to share that and how you've moved and pivoted from formal education and talked about happenstance and timing. And now you found something that you love and you're able to be successful and move up. And I definitely think I'm very excited. Hopefully, still know each other in a couple of years. It'd be really neat to see like a snapshot in time now, and then where you are in a couple of years, right? Did you pivot again? How did Pirate City do? Like, it would be really, really amazing to see that. So I just want to personally thank you for coming on and taking the time out of your day to have a conversation with me.
Yeah. Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so excited that I was able to be here and come and chat with you today. Like, I know we've talked about this for a while, and this was really fun.
Years. We've been talking about this for years, Rachel.
Yeah, I know.
However long it's been. Yeah. Are there any parting words, thoughts, anything that you'd like to wrap up with?
Just thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to not only talk about my work, but myself as a person. I don't know, not very many people ask me a lot of those questions. And so it was very fun to chat about that, and also kind of insightful. Like, it was nice to almost reflect as we were chatting. So that was kind of great. But yeah, I guess I would say that stay true to yourself. Try not to be a doormat, and be well.
All right. Well, thank you, Rachel, for coming on People Add Value Experience. Until next time.
Until next time. Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.